I'm Stephanie Adkinson, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can shape your life by seeing your mind.
Hello, and welcome to the Redirect Podcast, where we have spirited conversations and tell stories about finding purpose in retirement. For us, retirement isn't an ending, it's a beginning. Time to redirect your energy, wisdom, and passion toward new horizons. Whether you've recently retired, are planning for that transition, or are years into this journey, this podcast is your companion in navigating this meaningful chapter of life. Curt, Adam, how are you guys today?
Stupendous. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a good day.
It's going to be a great day. We've got a great guest today, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about life coaching. Speaking of which, have you guys ever kind of used a life coach or had any kind of coaching like that?
I have. I was thinking about, it was a gentleman back in Pittsburgh. His name is Curtis Songer. I was with him for about 12 years ago. And I was in between roles. I left one career and started to do some things, and I just needed a little advice on who am I, what am I, and all that stuff. So I got in connection with him, and we had, I want to say maybe about 4 months of gathering, and maybe every other week. It was very helpful to me. He obviously did the Strength Finder thing to find out what my attributes are. We did a bunch of other batteries to understand me a little bit more. But the biggest exercise that he did that I gained a lot out of was that he said, okay, I want you to look at your life and break it down into chapters. And each chapter put a title on it. You can go back as far as you want, or you can have 100 chapters. You could have 10, whatever. Just free associate things in your life and then give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I do this whole thing, and then he says, all right. We went through that, and he goes, next thing, take the good and bad and the ugly and talk about how the good and the bad and the ugly impacted you. So I did that. And when I got done, I had this lifeline of myself that at the time I didn't realize what was happening. But as I look back on it, I just saw this nice little connection thread. And it sort of made me feel really good about who I was, because what I did was as a kid, or what I did as a young adult, or what I did as a young father, there was this consistency that was through there that I needed to do that exercise in order to see it, realize it, and understand that's my makeup and that's who I am. And it was very beneficial. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
And do you see that even today?
Is that a continuation of the same timeline?
Well, it's a new chapter, and I think it's probably the best chapter of it all. Because having the ability to understand that earlier gives me more of awareness that I'm now pulling from those things that I had to make this time period very eclectic.
Yeah, and it probably helped you appreciate the time that you're in, right? Just accept the goodness for what you have now and embrace it. Right?
Yeah, very much so. And I made this comment once before in another episode. My wife, Jackie, made a comment to me. I'm really happy for you because you're finally doing something that's pulling on all the things that you do, as opposed to just focused in this one little silo. You now are touching bases of all the different things that have made you who you are, and you're utilizing your teaching skills, your people skills, your analytical skills, your marketing skills. It's now all being rolled up into this wonderful little project that I'm in that is yet another continuation of my life story. So what about you guys?
So I haven't had the pleasure of engaging specifically a life coach. I have had more episodic encounters with mentors and people that were important and influential and capable and had my interests in mind when consulting with me or giving me advice or helping shape decisions. So that was really a blessing to have had at important intervals in my life. I have had important people influence me, but to direct answer your question, I have not had the pleasure of engaging specifically a life coach.
Well, we have heard from Jerry Rushing on one of our previous podcasts, and I think I'm more like you, Adam. I mean, I've had a couple times when I was in a transition or I was making a major decision, and I went to somebody that I trusted who knew me, could really kind of speak into what I was doing. And specifically, thinking about retiring and starting to have that conversation, Jerry's advice was, hey, just lean into it. Don't make massive decisions right away. Take the time to think through it. And when I was going to buy the company that I was working for, it was 2009-10, and we know what business was like back then. And I sat down and called Jerry and had lunch with him, and that was kind of a God thing, because he sat down and said, do you trust that this is the right thing? And I said, I trust that God wants me to do this as long as I bring my A game. And we had that conversation. That was a really, really big point, but Jerry probably would have been the only person I would have turned to at that time just to speak through that.
See, after I hear your stories, the thing that interests me is that it seems like yours, as you said, Adam, is episodic in the sense that you had a moment in time that you had something that you had to get through, so you relied on somebody to give you some advice. That was similar to me because I wanted to know what my next step was, but having such a prolonged aspect, it wasn't just so focused on one little topic. He was sort of diving into who I am and what I'm about and making me realize who I am and what I'm about. So I think mine was more of a holistic view of myself and where I'm going, which then helped me to assert myself into certain directions as opposed to solving an issue, which it sounds like what you guys were.
And I would call yours a life coach. Your life coach. It's like somebody is looking at your life. It's not this shortened period of time for you. This is, like I said, the continuation of your life. So I think that's the beauty. And we're going to learn more about a life coach because they do know you and see you. So Adam.
So today's friend of Redirect is Stephanie Adkinson. Stephanie is a distinguished sales and marketing leader in the consumer packaged goods industry, a two-time recipient of the Progressive Woman's Top Woman in Grocery Award at the senior executive level, 2021 and 2023. Nicely done. Her career spans organizations like JBS USA, Tyson Foods, Kraft Foods Group, and Johnson & Johnson. During her 30-year career, Stephanie has managed iconic brands including the $1.5 billion Kraft macaroni and cheese, thank you, and the $800 million Oscar Mayer Lunchables portfolios. She has partnered with finance and supply chain, R&D, operations, innovation, marketing, and insights, as well as national customers including Kroger and Walmart. She has earned consecutive Consumer Vendor of the Year awards 2022 and 2023. So she is not a has-been. She is a current somebody. Yeah. A recognition in Marketing News Top 10 Meat Trends 2020 for her innovative 1855 beef co-branding execution. Stephanie is also, and why we're here mostly to talk about her today, she's also a professional certified life coach trained at the Life Coach School, where she helps clients achieve personal and professional goals through mindset coaching, career navigation, business strategies, and development. She's also succeeded as a 2X Ironman triathlete.
2 times.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get that right. That's 2 times.
Yeah.
There we go.
I think once would be enough.
Yeah.
I thought she would learn her lesson, but obviously glutton for punishment.
Right. It turns out she's also a slow learner.
That's good.
As a strategist, speaker, and community volunteer advocate who maintains an active, healthy lifestyle, Stephanie exemplifies balanced leadership that encompasses professional achievement, personal wellness, and community engagement. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I love hearing these stories.
Wait. Which stories? Ours or that bio? Because that was fun.
Well, the bio first, but no, it is not all about me, right? I loved hearing Curt and Dale talk about the evidence that they had already built throughout their lives and their career in order to catapult them into the next phase of their lives, right? We find evidence for things we can do. We find evidence for things we can't do. And whatever we're looking for, we will find.
Yeah, there's some cognitive bias or thinking confirmations or even thinking errors as it relates to biases that, you find what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Stephanie, I'm a slow learner, and your opening, you made a comment, and you need to break that down for me. All right? Tell me your opening again. Read that again and just sort of break it down to me and what that really means so I can understand it, because as Adam has pointed out many times, I need as much help as I can get.
Sure. And I had shared that I'm going to talk about how you can shape your life by shaping your mind. Oftentimes we're in autopilot, and we just operate from a stance of what we believe or what we think, and it gets ingrained in us. And without the help of someone who can help you step back and find the evidence in your life, like your coach did, Curt, all of these milestones, everything about you, we either take action or we don't, usually based on a feeling we have. Like, we can all get paralyzed by our feelings, but those are driven by thoughts that may or may not be true.
And somebody who is objective, and I think people who are going to a life coach is looking for somebody to objectively look at them, hear them, are the ones that can make that evident and make it clear to somebody so that then they can act on it. But it's getting, confirmation that, yeah, this is what I'm feeling. Let's confirm that. Now you can act on it. Is that?
Yeah, and we have a feeling because we have a thought. If we don't have a thought about something, there's really no feeling that comes with that. I've had a lot of coaching, and I've had a coach for 5 years, and she introduced me to the Life Coach School. And even on my way here, I started getting nervous. So why did I feel nervous? Because there was some type of thought that was making me feel nervous. Well, I'm asking myself, well, what's driving that feeling? And really, it's like, I think it's not going to go well, or I might mess up. Right? And then this feeling will drive an action. So if I think I'm going to mess up, then what I don't do is listen to you, right? I'm not being part of this conversation.
Not fully engaged.
Right. What I am doing is thinking about myself. And when I focus on those aspects, then I'll create the result that I don't even want.
I think people who jump out of airplanes, skydivers and such, will call that target fixation. The idea of you look where you go where you look, and if you don't want to go towards the power lines, don't go towards the power lines. Be thinking about where you want to go. Is that fair to say? That's
fair to say. When we're driving a car and we're making a turn, if we're going down the highway and they have the barricades, if we're looking at that barricade, we will move that way instead of looking straight ahead of where we want to go. We can still be aware of our surroundings, but we need to stay focused on where we want to go. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do?
We're all about finding purpose in retirement. I think there's a lot of people who are focusing on that point and ready to make a giant leap and not going through the thought process. And this is what I get from Jerry, and Jerry had said this: lean into it. Lean in, look at the landscape, look at everything going on, and what you're talking about, I think would be a really, really big benefit.
So if I can, let's elevate our position here just a little bit, and let's talk for a moment about you. And how did you get specifically into life coaching?
I specifically got into life coaching after I hired my coach. When I started working at JBS over 5 years ago, I hired Polly Rowland as my career coach, helping me with this transition into, it was actually at that time JBS. So I had never had any beef experience. So I had raw protein, never any beef experience. I'm leading a team of all men. If you think about that industry,
yeah.
I shared I had no experience, and two of the folks that were on my team had interviewed for the role. I'm going to need some help here. And she did help me. And we've been together, like I said, over 5 years. And so much of what she has helped me with is my thinking. One great example is I got really frustrated with my boss. He was working on so many different projects at the corporate level that we didn't spend a lot of time together. I got stuck on my thinking that I needed my boss to help me. And I didn't. That was just a thought. I was the fact is, the circumstances is, they hired me to do a job. And they believed that I could do it. But I thought I needed him to step in to remove some barriers. And that is not what I needed. I was he wasn't helping me. And the result I got of that, from feeling frustrated and not taking action that I wanted to by complaining or, putting my energy into what I thought wasn't happening, wasn't getting me the results I wanted. And those results were that I have that in me to go get it myself and do it.
How do you get yourself from externalizing your problems? Hey, and I don't want to overstate it to say you're playing the victim. That's maybe too harsh of an approach to take. But in your perspective, possibly disadvantaged by someone else. Like, hey, I have expectations, I have needs that these other people are not meeting. And shifting that, completely flipping the script, like, hey, I'm going to take control of what I can. How do you create that mind shift? And did I characterize that accurately?
Yes. It's becoming aware of your mind and how it is working. One example we use is that we drive somewhere and we get there, we don't know how we got there, where our thoughts often are the same. We're just on autopilot in something, and we default to what we know instead of using techniques and a coach that can help me step back and understands what the facts of the situation are, and then separating my thoughts from that. Because that thought will create that feeling, and it puts us into a tailspin. And it's taken years of practice. I mean, I still do this. I was on a call with my boss yesterday. I was extremely frustrated. I'm having a one-on-one with my boss. It's the two of us. I have a captive audience. And I said, no one is listening to me. I think think about that. You all could all say the fact is Stephanie's boss is sitting across from her. He's listening. And I have this thought, no one is listening to me. I'm feeling frustrated. And that's just not true.
It's negative self-talk.
It is. What do I do in that moment? My actions are I'm not leading well. I'm not getting my work done. I'm spending unnecessary energy. Like, I'm the leader of my team here. I have everything I need to get this done. I'm in that moment, but now I can step back and say, okay, this is kind of crazy thinking here. This isn't true.
Get rid of the noise.
Get rid of the noise.
Yeah. I did a little research on benefits of a life coach. And these are some of the things that popped out, and I'm curious on your thoughts. Number one, increased self-awareness, improved goal setting, enhanced productivity, better relationships, stress management, increased confidence, and enhanced decision-making.
I believe all of that to be true.
Now, how does that work for someone who's in retirement? Because everything we talked about, our examples, what you were just talking about now, was in the world of work. And I used my coach at the time when I was in the world of work. Well, my work days are over. And here I am, got to this place called retirement. Why would I need a life coach at this time of my life?
Well, if I think about the conversations I hear from men and women, more men, like, what is going to happen when I'm home all the time? Or a wife, like, I've been working, either husband's been gone or you both been gone. Now you're in this new space together. How are you expecting the other person to act? Well, the first thing is we have to understand that we have manuals for how people should behave.
But do we? Do we behave like the manual says? I'm going to say myself, no.
And where does this manual exist? Right.
Well, it's not a hard copy, but it's probably a file you have in your mind, right? I think about my mom. I want to serve her when my parents come to visit me, and I want to cook for them. My mom she gets in the kitchen and she starts cooking. So my thought is, she shouldn't be doing that. How do I feel? Feel resentment. And then I start huffing and puffing. I don't talk to my mom. The result of this is I can't serve her. Like, I just defeated the whole thing that I wanted. And when we think about how someone should act, so if you have a spouse and they want you to get up early in the morning with them, and that's not your plan in retirement, like, Have you all communicated on this? What it's going to look like when you're together in your home, or are you just going to stick to your thoughts on how things should go, how they should behave, and create tension in this new life together in your, next chapter, your next 30?
Right. It's interesting for me. I'll do things, and fortunately I have a partner who will correct me. She believes I'm always in training. So every time there's an opportunity to give me some training, she does.
And you're teachable.
But that's how, okay, now I understand that. I want you to do more. I will start looking for more to do. Now I can sit and wait for somebody to tell me, or I can start stepping forward. Because if I'm now searching for more help, I would love to, I think, talk to somebody objectively who can kind of look at my life and how does that now apply in my relationship with the person that I'm at home a lot more with? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to stop and wait a second, we need to talk about this? There seems to be a lot of opportunity to bring in, somebody who's objective, who kind of knows you, but saying, because everybody who knows me is just like, okay, you're never going to be bored because you're going to be so busy because that's just the way you are. Well, I am going to have periods of being not busy. And that's when somebody can really call that out.
Yeah. And how do you want to spend your time? How much of your time do you want to spend with your spouse? How much of your time do you want to volunteer, give back to your community, coach, mentor?
How many clients do you currently support?
I try to have about 10 a month because I am still working full time, contributing there. And I am in my,
It sucks. Yeah.
I'm in my pre-retirement planning stage, right? So I've built up a clientele. A lot of it's word of mouth, and then I will continue to coach in the evenings and then on the weekends.
And would you say that the majority of your clients right now are coming to you for a more professional perspective?
Right now, more professional. Lots of folks in transition, building strategies, and it's my boss, right? And we get into this again, how should my boss behave? So there's so much to unpack in that because we have a manual for how our bosses should behave, our coworkers, our peers, and all of that translates to life.
So there is a very clear comparison here, whether it's going to be my transition in retirement, my transition in my career. If I'm going into transition stuff and I've kind of hired you as my life, tell me, where do we start?
So the first session that we have is a discovery. So I will ask a lot of questions and ask more open-ended and some why questions. So it's really getting to know each other, learn each other's styles. You start building some trust, and I always try to show some vulnerability and share an experience so that it opens up the client to become vulnerable. And that happens more throughout, the time we meet. But we start with a discovery session because oftentimes what a client thinks, and I'll continue to use the example of the boss, it is about the boss, but we eventually will transition to, how are you making this about you?
Really?
Why am I making this about me? So we continue to work through that, and we will build a plan of action. And then there's a follow-up. I'll always give a recap. I will put some follow-up in there, and we will revisit it to help with accountability and progression forward. And if there isn't progression forward, is that okay? It may be okay for the client, or it may not be. And then why is it okay? Why is it not okay? Why do you feel good about where you're going? Why do you not feel good?
The interesting word for me is accountability. If I, again, put myself into the transition in retirement, the only accountable person I'm going to have is the partner I'm living with. And I think having an objective third party as being another accountability partner would be pretty darn strong.
I mean, that's why I have a coach, for accountability, and so that I can continue to learn. I mean, my motto is I am a student, And I say that to my team all the time. So when new things come our way, we're students. That's okay.
I think the corporate buzzword right now is curiosity. To be,
Yes.
to be curious.
Yes. And that's part of the upfront, the discovery session. Be curious. And for the client to be curious.
So I've heard you say a couple of times now that you were faced with something and then you questioned, identify what I'm feeling, and then ask yourself why I'm feeling that. I don't feel like that's exactly normal. Like a lot of people don't do that. They don't consider that introspective view of what am I feeling and why am I feeling it. Yeah. I think that's one of the healthiest things that people can do, and it really internalizes things appropriately. Where did you learn to do that, and how long have you looked at life like that?
I learned it through my coach, Polly, because she brought the concepts of this from, her teaching, her learnings from the life coach school. And then I dug into that additionally when I went through the life coach school and got my certification. Do
you feel like that is possibly one of the primary benefits of this coaching process, leaning into retirement specifically, is a guide, someone who will help you honestly examine yourself and how are you feeling, why are you feeling this way, and how to let that influence your path forward? I do.
I will also want to say, not all feelings are okay to have. You can feel resentment. You can feel human. Happy.
They're
right.
Human. Yeah.
They're human. And we don't sit in all of those all the time, right? Our feelings come and go. It is sitting back and reflecting on, what do I want for my life? If I don't want this resentment, there is something I'm going to have to look at inside of me to reframe my thoughts, to dig into why this is happening. And I find that most often so much comes down to, am I worthy? Can I do this? What don't I believe about myself?
And that's something you must sit in and not move past and just keep going. We've heard this a couple times from some of our people that we've had on the podcast.
We will rejoin our conversation in just a moment. Thank you for listening to the Redirect Podcast. We appreciate your support. Do you love what you're hearing? Don't keep it to yourself. Follow the Redirect Podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify and never miss an episode that inspires your next chapter in life's journey. While you're there, hit a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share your favorite episode with a friend who's ready for their own life pivot. And don't forget to join the conversation on Instagram at The Redirect Podcast. Comment, tag us, and let us know how you are redirecting your journey. Now let's get back to today's conversation. I've finally understood your opening statement, and I'm really internalizing it. When you're at a point where you've exited your work life, you have more time to think. And like you talked about, even with your example with your mom, you had that instant thought that she was in the kitchen and you weren't serving her, which then all of a sudden, from what I heard from your description, took that experience that could have been great when you could have worked alongside of her to be joyful, as opposed to, wow, she just came in here and did this. And I see this myself as, if I have a thought that is thinking about how the outcome's going to be, I've already put myself in a negative that I now have to overcome in order to start what I was going to start originally. It's important to think, but don't let your thoughts suppress your actionable opportunity to go get something done.
Absolutely.
And it's so easily done, because we sit there, and when you made the comment about, are we worthy? And I think I justify this as enough. Am I enough? We're looking for that kudos, that pat on the back, that you're doing a great job. But if you keep putting these thoughts in front of you that are deterring you from doing what you wanted to do, you're wasting time.
Right.
How much is that going to cost me now that you just gave me that advice?
I don't know. It seems like you explained it pretty well. I feel like you should be charging her.
I love it. Love it. There might be something else you could do.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this next 30.
Yeah. I've actually had people approach me about doing that. And then I said, no, I want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
A redirect experience.
You got it, baby. You got it.
Are there aha moments that are kind of consistent with people when you're working with them? And is there the moment where they go, that's it, that's gold?
There is. It's usually on the same topic. It keeps rolling back to the same thing and, the same thought. And when they realize that, oh my gosh, these thoughts are driving the experiences I have in my life, it's life-changing. It's like, oh, right? And then I conquer this one, and then we see it creep up in another way, and the client realizes it's my thoughts again. And I think, Adam, that's where that part of, you were talking about the introspective, to take a step back, it can become a habit, right? A habit we want to grab onto and just take that step back. It's no different than people saying, wait 24 hours before you send that angry email, right? Then we come back to it, or that thing I'm going to say to my spouse or my child. And it's, okay, if I wait 24 hours, I have a different perspective on it.
I found myself when I was working that I had an email that I had to do, and I would sit down and just type it in the raw emotion that I wanted it to be. And then I would step away for a half an hour, and I'd come back and reread it. And I found what was helpful for me is that, I was able to unload everything that I wanted to get off my chest at that point, but then recognize that's not really the right way to communicate with somebody. So how can we say the same things that is more focused on the result versus discussing what the problem is? And that was very helpful. Take that time.
Can I tell you something that I used to coach my team to do? Because we would do the same thing, and we were really collaborative, talked a lot about a bunch of stuff pretty regularly. And so if somebody had, they were huffing and puffing about something that went wrong with the customer, they would come in to my office like, you're not going to believe this. And they were just looking for an opportunity to vent, which was really fun. And I, got to validate them and confirm for them that, hey, I would feel the same way, which is really encouraging for them. And then I would tell them, okay, here's what you do. Say what you should say, and then change your font color to white. And say a couple of things you shouldn't say. That way you typed it, you said it, and you sent it.
Yeah. But as we know now,
don't do that, folks.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, everybody can just do, convert everything to black, and then
there'll be a lot of blank emails going out this week, I can see. Well, it's very interesting because Monday I have a meeting with a person who's going to be graduating from UC. In a quick conversation I just had with her, she said, well, I'm lost. I'm like, wow, what an opportunity. We got a whole life of experience. We've been lost before, but I'm pretty sure that, we're going to get to a point where I can help her in a way that I can share my life experience, and say, my gosh, my career is the most crooked path you could possibly take. It's okay. All I really want to convey is it's okay to feel lost, but you can't let that hold you back. You still got to move forward because it's the only way you're going to find your way. And I think that's got a lot to do with retirement, because we're going to feel lost, but with the best information we have, and if we've done a plan, if we've thought about our purpose, that'll get us back on that road and be able to move forward. And you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to find out. But having, I think, a coach helps you move forward, and that's the role I'd want to play in this person's life, and then throw her over to you, Steph, and say, here's a professional coach to listen to the pros. But for me, it's all about how to get unstuck. The process of realizing it's okay, but stop. For an ADD person like me to stop and think and spend time internally is really hard.
It's work.
Really hard to do, because I'm going to go to the next thing. You and I talked a couple months ago about my biggest fear in life is being bored. And you just looked at me and said, that's a thought. That's a thought. And then she said, well, what did you say? Explain that from your perspective. I'd love to hear this.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, I just asked you, well, what does boredom mean? Have you defined boredom? And you hadn't.
The other thing I heard you say, Stephanie, when we were having our preliminary conversation about this episode, was you asked him, what does boredom look like to you? And I think there was a follow-up question. Why do you fear that? Like, why do you fear it? What caused the fear of boredom? Separately, what does it look like, and why do you fear that? And
well, he's here. Let's ask.
Maybe it's boredom would be me spending time with myself, and not I love adventure. It would be it's life without adventure, life without curiosity, life without, I think,
movement.
Yeah, maybe movement, but I remember being in college and I feared getting a boring job or a boring partner as a spouse because I loved learning new things. I loved adventure. Life without those things was by default boredom. But I never spent any time there.
As you said previously, you want to experience everything in the world.
Meet every person.
Meet everybody.
Meet every person.
Well,
guess what? You're never going to be bored, my friend. There's a lot of people out there.
And everybody's got a story. And everybody's got a great story to tell. We're hearing from Steph.
And I would ask you, Dale, as you were talking, just ask you what you're avoiding. So when we get ourselves busy to avoid a feeling, there's something deeper to dig into.
Yeah, there's something scary out there, I think.
That.
So Stephanie,
Exactly
if I can take you back to something you said a few moments ago, because I'd love to hear you talk about it more, is this idea of, am I worthy? Am I enough? I think is the other word I heard you say. Why is that something to consider? Because I think we kind of glossed past that. And why does someone wonder that about themselves, possibly as it relates to transition?
If I go back to the story about my mom in the kitchen, it really boiled down to, am I good enough with my mom? Like seeking some of that approval, making assumptions, right? Another thought is I'm not good enough, so she has to jump in. And that really all, am I good enough, goes back to our identity and what and who we are rooted into. And if we know our identity, then we can move forward. We will make decisions every day in our life, and we need to own those. We should want to own those. I will make a decision today, and when I have more information, I might make a different decision. I can change my decisions. And knowing some of that gives me some of the freedom to be able to do the things I want, to try new things, to not be shackled by fear of failure. I mean, right there. Well, what does failure look like to you? And then usually, again, points back to, am I worthy enough? Am I loved?
So I think I have a hot take on that fear of failure thing. I have a friend, a distant friend that guy got towards the end of his life, and he had a lifetime of regret and just lived in this tumult of bad decision after bad decision. And I got to see that at a very young age for myself. And so I thought, man, I do not want to get to the end of my life and look at my life like that. And so I figured out, and maybe I'm wrong about this, maybe somebody else, please validate me. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to make the best decision possible with the information that I have, and however that turns out is the way it was supposed to turn out. And if it turns out poorly, I don't have to regret that. I made a good decision using the best tools and information and counselors at the time. I could make that decision and move forward. And if it turns out great, great. And if it doesn't turn out great, also great. It's life. Move on.
You're making another decision after that decision in order to get yourself going in another direction.
Which is why, Stephanie, you referenced when I move forward and I get some more information, I'll make a different decision. That resonates with me because I think, and especially as you lean into retirement, moving forward, move forward,
yes.
Make decisions, commit yourself to meaning and purpose. Seek out those resources like coaches and community and purpose that really make life worth living, gives meaning to your day. if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you wanted to in a few weeks, a couple of years, pivot, redirect, make a new decision. I defer to you, Stephanie, to comment on that and tell me where I'm way off base.
No, Adam, I think you're spot on. And I will say, too, that making no decision is a decision.
Yeah.
That happens quite a bit, too. But most people want to move forward. They don't know how and need some direction to help them move forward. The decision to retire. Many people have a fear of not having enough money. Will that last me? What are all these circumstances that are going to happen in my next 30? You can still move forward, and then you make decisions in the moment and in the phase that you're in.
The beauty of where we are right now was 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Doing the podcast was not on my radar. I don't know if it was on your radar, Adam or Curt, but all of a sudden we had this opportunity that we all acted on. Yeah. We talked about it. Is it insane or not? No, we don't think it's insane. And, but we thought about it. We considered it. And
like 11 minutes.
At least. It's as long as I've ever spent thinking about something.
I was going to say, Dale was ADD.
What?
Squirrel.
That was a good day.
Are you kidding me? God, I started sweating.
You guys do talk about the squirrel, right? Squirrel.
He names
squirrel. My theme animal, squirrel.
So I have a question for you. And even in the title coach, what is your approach when you work with somebody?
The goal is to help them see that. There are times when, it is, hang on a minute here. Let's take a step back, and providing some direct direction when they need it, or if they're really struggling and saying, just tell me. And I do that with my coach sometimes. Just tell me. If we think about our children, we have to tell them what to do, but when they realize it and see it for themselves, it's just easier to take action. And they're learning. And they own it. Yeah. And then eventually it is to have them learn these things and start doing them on their own. We can feed them, provide them fish, or teach them how to fish so that they can take it and do it for a lifetime and pass it down.
This has been great. Thank you for coaching us. Yes. Definitely we need it. But I would love to just turn it back to you in that what's the biggest takeaways that you could leave our listeners with right now? What would that be?
Yeah, I would just say that we have the power to do the things that we want to do. And having someone provide you, whether it be a mentor or a coach or a trusted friend or coworker, have someone come along with you on the journey. It's better together.
It's an extension of community, right? It's a more focused, more purposeful extension of community.
Yes.
Which we know is really critical in retirement.
Yeah.
It's community.
And if one of our listeners wants to connect with you to help you help them to be accountable, how can they reach you, Stephanie?
Yeah, they can reach me at stephanieadkinson.com, and I'll spell it STEPHANIEAD as in dog, KINSON. Or they can reach me on my cell. I'm happy to hand that out, 479-586-9179.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you next time on the Redirect Podcast. Big thanks to the University of Cincinnati's 1819 Innovation Hub for allowing us to use the eSports recording studio to record today's podcast. Catch up on all the Redirect Podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To begin your Redirect journey, head over to redirect-u.com. Want to connect with the Redirect team? Feel free to email us at info@redirect-u.com. Remember, there's purpose in your life, so find it and go do something about it.